Hey guys, I'm Driz, and I'm going to be doing another mod tutorial here today on configs. And configs are pretty great. They let you do a lot of things. They let you control things externally. So that way, if ever you want to change variables, you want to add variables, you want to make things different sizes, different weights, you want to make things spawn more, spawn less, spawn at all. So there's a lot of reasons to do this, and it lets mod makers or mod pack makers essentially to um, control more of what's going on. That way things are more in line with what they're doing, and it gives you more variety to when it comes to a lot of um, just spawning in general, and the chance of things spawning, and you can increase those, and it's a good way for you to find out if things are happening without having to change your code. So what I did here is you really only need a couple of things. You need a config, either a client config or um, a common config. There is a server config too, but I didn't not going to show that here. I'm going to do that in another video. And you need a spec for that config. So here I have I have mine set up. Essentially, I just call the client config, which is down here as client, and I create my spec, and then I pair them up here in order to just create. Oops. In order to create my, and then I just build it, essentially. So this creates my config. So I made two of these, one for my client and one for my common. I don't have many client examples. I actually don't have any that work, just because it actually, well, it would work, but I'm not doing anything client side. Eventually, I will make a video that will use a client config, and it will include that in the title. So if you're looking for that, you can definitely look for that in the future. But for now, most of my configs are going to be the common configs. So what I set up here is you use the spec and you call it here in your client config, and it sets up a Boolean, which is file control. These are really simple. There are more complex ones, which I'm going to show in another tutorial, but these are just really simple things like integers and Booleans. And what you do is you set up a forward spec builder as your config. This is my constructor essentially for this. And then here I have my builder. So this is what it's going to be called. I actually have examples. So you'll see a bunch of different, this one's a bit different than this one. So you'll see a couple examples. The comment, so essentially what it says above the actual config. And this is the config itself. So the config is fog control, and the default is false, so it will be false unless you want it on, in which case it's optional. Fog, I used fog as an example because fog is only client based. So there's no fog on the server. All the fog happens on the client. So whether or not you want to have it on or have it off, it should be something that you can control for that reason. So this is a good example. Same with particles. Particles is another good example that you should always have in your client config. But what I did here mostly is with origin, which I am going to add in another video, so I don't actually have any examples of this, but I do have examples of the biome ones and the feature. I actually made a config biome. So here, what I have here is something a little bit different. I am pushing multiple different builders, and they all show up in the same config. Here, I'll show you guys. So this is one set, this is another set, this is a third set, and this is my client one. It has all the numbers, the defaults, the range defaults. It has everything set up. And essentially you just build or pop, and it populates inside of your config, which is already essentially created at this point. So really there isn't much to explain. You make a comment and you define your integers, And when it comes to booleans, so here this is your default. So what your actual integer is going to be when you don't set it to something. And then here is your minimum and maximum. So you can be a minimum of 1, or you can have a maximum of 500. I set it high just to give you guys an example. Some of these are different, like this is the max because you can only build that high. You can't build any higher than this. So that's why the max was set to that. And essentially, there really isn't much more to explain. So I am going to show you guys how I used it. This is how I used it. I made a config biome here. And what I did is I set the config weight here, and you can set it to 0. I can make it settable to 0, in which case it would not spawn, which is possible, and at that point it gives you complete control over whether or not it spawns at all, right? Which is pretty great. This does work. I'll show you guys in a minute. Another couple things that I did add to show you guys the versatility of it is that I added a boolean here. So my config biome only registers if you let it register. So it won't spawn if you don't want it to. You can make them so that way only specific biomes spawn if that's what you want. Another thing that I added is that I made it so that you can remove all the biomes from the default this way here. This is actually what controls the default, this method, and this actually does work. So everything does happen. And I'm going to show you guys a quick example. So just real quick, I'm going to show you guys my Minecraft screen. I'm actually going to load up a custom game, a custom world. While this is loading, I'm going to explain just the basics, basically, that, if you need any help, if you're looking for anything, if you have any questions about any of this or anything that I show in any of my tutorials, you're more than welcome to message me on Discord. I do support a modding community down in my description, and you can always message me there. In addition to that, I have a couple of mods called Foam Dome and Grass World. They're pretty decent mods. You should check them out if you haven't. I'm always looking for people that help me do things, textures, and edit videos, so on. So if you're looking to help out, you're more than welcome to do that too. And essentially, I'm going to fly around, find one of my biomes. I had tested this previously, and I actually spawned in a place that had all 3 of my biomes right there. So it was really good, but unfortunately, as you can see, not having that kind of luck. But if I can find a place with my biome, then at least you'll know that's working. It is working. So you don't have to watch me find it if you really don't want to. But I will take the time to look for it just so that you can see that it's done. You can always fast forward through the video. But this pretty much controls everything. And I mean, I would recommend using configs for a lot of your things, especially if you want to be, I think that's one of mine. Especially if you want to be used in mod packs. Look, there's 2 of them. And this one here has my feature. 10 is pretty high, as you can see. So I would set my default a bit lower, but there's another one over there. Like you can see, everything's working, and that's it. If you have any questions about what I've shown you, there are more complex uses to config, so you can do a lot more. And I will show another video on this eventually. Oh shoot, right, duh. I almost forgot. Another thing you need is this here at the end. You do need to add these to your main. this will load your configs. This is how you load your configs. I totally forgot to add this, but just to make sure I don't forget, this is how you load your configs. You need this. Essentially, this mod config type is something that's in Minecraft. There it is. So this is something, basically you're loading the types from, this is how you control what type it is, whether or not it's client or common. This is how you do it. And if you're looking to find them during your testing, it will be in a config in your run folder, and everything will populate. It really is that simple. My bad for forgetting about that, but thanks a lot for watching, guys, and if you have any questions, please let me know.